Right, here we go
Right.
then.
Hello, Juicy Lucy from Law Counsel.
And
We've got the lovely Jeff with us today.
we have, and he's got some wicked ideas in personal injury claims. So if you'd like to give a bit of a background of how you come up with this, Jeff, fantastic.
Okay. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, so it may not be all that.
We're still weirdo on it as well, and we've done loads of them, in all honesty.
Don't worry,
The
Jeff.
worst thing, Jeff, is thinking, oh my
this-
God, other people are going to be listening to it.
Okay. This all came about as a result of a Zoom that I was on with a good friend of mine, Liz Lambert. I've known her for years. She is a lawyer who is not part of the system. I think that's probably the best way to describe her. And she set up what's called Section 83, which is referring to the Health and Safety at Work Act 2015 in New Zealand, which she's using to fight back against some of these jab things that have been inflicted on people. And from the Section 83, the number 8 Workers' Union of New Zealand Incorporated got established. I couldn't figure out how she came up with number 8, but it relates to number 8 wire, which is a multi-purpose thing that's used to fix just about everything apparently. So that's how it came about. And then in one of the Zooms, we were talking about, I think, getting back. And the thought of professional liability insurance flashed through my mind as a possible way to help people. And then that jogged Liz's memory. There was this terrible Pike River mine disaster years ago where many miners were killed, and there's a lot of suspicion about skullduggery and all that. But it turns out that the professional indemnity insurers paid out about $2.5 million to the families of the miners that were killed. And that sort of jogged Liz's mind and said, well, you know, we might be able to pursue this. So having been in the insurance business for some 40 years, despite my youthful appearance, in 4 different countries, I decided to go down a few rabbit holes. So first of all, I wrote to the local authority where we live up here in New Zealand's windowless north, the Far North District Council. And I wrote to them and said, look, have you got professional indemnity insurance? Please send me the policy wording. Well, I got back from them their public liability insurance policy wording and their employer's liability, which was very interesting, actually. So I wrote to them and I said, look, thank you for this. It's very interesting, but it's not what I asked for. So they then wrote back and said, we don't have professional indemnity insurance. And I thought, well, you must be joking, but they don't. So this means that the mayor and all the councillors and probably a lot of the council staff are wide open for being sued in their personal capacity, and they could lose everything.
Wow.
And it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people.
Well, that's very true.
That is very true.
Or more deserving. Anyway, so that was that. Then I went looking again, and I did find on the website of Auckland City Council their governance thing, which related to their insurance, and it listed professional indemnity, public liability, and all these other odds and sods. So then I got to reading through the policy wording for the councils and came across all these definitions for personal injury and claim and so on and so on. I thought, well, that's interesting. So then I got in touch. I have filed a personal injury claim against this outfit, New World, which is one of the big supermarket groups in New Zealand, for what their manager, this Tom Wright guy, did, not just to me, but 5 of my friends in his supermarket. He called the cops, and the cops went after me for 10 months before I was able to beat them all ends up and get rid of what they were trying to fit me up for. So that was
what were the cops actually called for?
Can you imagine 5 pensioners and a friend turning violent in a supermarket?
Right.
Over
I
what?
kid you not.
What was this? Was this over mask wearing? Was it?
Yeah, or not mask wearing.
Yeah.
We all lined
Right.
up outside the super. Well, you see, we had this get together for coffee on a Tuesday morning, and on Tuesdays the supermarkets give pensioners an extra 5% off the shopping. So we said, all right, why don't we all have a trot down to New World in Kerry, we'll do our shopping together. So we all lined up outside with the sheeple who were wearing masks. We all had mask exemptions, and I was actually wearing mine when I went into the supermarket. You might not be able to see it, but that's it. I was actually wearing that when I went in the supermarket.
Yeah.
And I had my little chat with the Gestapo guy on duty, letting the sheeple in. No problem, went in, all of us went in, did our shopping. And then when I come through the checkout, I see my friends talking to cops. Well, what's all this about? Anyway, cut a long story short, they sort of arrested me and stuck me in the police car because I wouldn't tell them who I was and where I was from and all this. But it was so hot in that car. I said, look, I'll tell you who I am, just let me go. So they let me go after I told them who I was. That's the story in itself, but we'll leave that for another time. Anyway, we had a quite, shall we say, an intense discussion with this one cop, Nick Ross. And I'm not afraid to name these people, name them and shame them. And I called him Robocop Ross. He was a very arrogant individual and he wasn't interested in any information that I had. He knew I had this face mask exemption. A few days later, he sends an infringement notice in the mail, failing to wear a face mask in level 2. Oh, what's all this about? Gets better. In October, he sends me what's called a formal police warning letter, which was quite draconian in actual fact. And there was rubbish in that. Anyway, cut a long story short.
Sorry, Jeff, have you got copies of them letters still? Or?
Everything. I've got everything. It's all part of the evidence.
Maybe we could put that up at the end of the chat.
Well, I can't. I've got to find it first. I could
do
it. But...
Yeah.
So anyway, I requested a defended hearing because I thought, they can't get away with this. And so I got an initial court date to get a court date, if you understand my meaning. And so I go into the court. I've been tipped off what to do by a freedom fighter. And they said, are you Mr. Waterhouse? I said, well, sounds like me. But no, I'm here. I'm Godfrey the living man. And that rather took them by surprise. Anyway, I wasn't there very long and I was out. So they gave me a court date, would you believe, April the 1st.
You can't make it up, can you?
No, you can't.
No, you can't. You can't.
You can't.
Anyway, on the 28th of March, they sent me a letter saying, we are not proceeding with this thing. You needn't come to court. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Well, you can imagine I was more than a little bit put out because I wanted my day in court so that I could expose all their lies. But they deprived me of that. Anyway, I turned up at court and I'd been turned down for legal aid by the Injustice Department because the crime I'd committed was not serious enough to qualify me for legal aid. If I'd murdered somebody, I'd have been well away. Anyway, as is my wont, I read their letter rather thoroughly, and it said something about usually we do not grant legal aid. Well, usually is not always. Anyway, I wrote to them, I appealed it, and on the morning of the case, they confirmed that I had been granted legal aid. This lawyer turns up with the bare minimum of information. I had a file thick enough to choke a horse. And he admitted that I would have been better off staying representing myself than having him. And the magistrate woman, yeah, that was an interesting admission. I've always done better without lawyers against the cops, actually.
Don't you?
I took them on in the High Court in Whangarei years ago and beat them. But this magistrate woman, oh no, before that, the lawyer guy went and spoke to the cop prosecutor. And I was nothing, you know, I was just chopped liver, as the saying goes. And then he comes back and he says, well, this is going away. What do you mean it's going away? Well, they're going to drop it. I said, well, I don't want it dropped. I want my day in court. And he admitted, he said, well, you're the first one I've ever had who hasn't wanted his charge dropped and wanted to be in court. So I said, yeah, I do, and I want to go. And oh, the other, you'll love this. I turn up at court without a mask, obviously. And everybody and his dog was wearing a mask. So I go to the security, they let me in. Then I go to the woman who lets you into the court, and she says, are you vaccinated? No. I don't wear a mask either, and I've never had a test. Oh. So she had to go and seek guidance from on high as to whether or not they were even going to let me into the court for my case. Anyway, I got in. And I managed to get into the court, and there's this community magistrate woman from Auckland sat up there on and she said, well, Mr. Waterhouse, I have given the police leave to withdraw the thing, and that's it. Game over. There's nothing here. Goodbye. Oh, there you are. That's justice for you. Anyway, that was when, of course, it became payback and pushback time. But I had another 4-month battle against this other guy, this detective inspector Begbie. And he was the one, apparently, who had the sole authority to withdraw this police warning thing against me. Now, where he got that authority from, I don't know. I'm still waiting to find out. But the interesting thing, again, is, again, on April the 1st, 2021, there was a court case in Hamilton. And these police letter things, they were declared illegal by a High Court judge in Hamilton. So they had no right to even issue the thing in the first place. So, and there were 12 cops altogether, from plod to inspector, over that 10-month period, that were involved in trying to fit me up. So you can
what a
imagine,
waste of money.
Well, exactly. And the amount of time and research. That is my file. That is my paperwork.
Over that one mask issue.
Yeah, that one mask issue, which they had no right. And the cop, RoboCop Ross, even in his own documentation, he confirmed that I had an exemption and I was wearing it. And I'm even on video. This is another interesting thing. I'm even on video going into the supermarket, and there's an actual, I got a photograph of me wearing the exemption, and all my friends had exemptions as well. So that's where a lot of this kicked off. So, as I say, I have filed a personal injury claim with New World with their insurance. The council told me I couldn't claim on their insurance because I wasn't insured. And thinking about it, that makes sense, because the council is the insured, and then you've got the insurance company, and I am a claimant. Then if you just think about a car accident, you're driving your car, somebody hits your car and it's their fault. Your insurance company pays your claim. I'm confused here. Anyway, moving right on. But basically, that's where it's going. So then there's a privacy claim, there's the Privacy Act breach, and all sorts of stuff. So moving along, I got to thinking, with all these definitions of personal injury that are in these public liability policies, that people could file claims, because we have in New Zealand this ACC, Accident Compensation Corporation. That's the act that you've got the reference to. So I spoke to a team leader in the claims department of this big brokerage firm, Crombie Lockwood, who are the ones that insure this New World outfit. And the one I spoke to originally really didn't know what I was on about. So I got to talk to this Rochelle woman. And she said, well, no, you can't file a personal injury claim in New Zealand because they're all covered under ACC. And if you look at the policy, you'll see a reference to it. Well, she was getting her underwear in a knot a little bit, I think, because she was classing public liability insurance the same as employers' liability. And she's right. In employers' liability, anything that's covered by this ACC mob, you can't claim under insurance. But there is no reference to ACC in a public liability insurance policy because it's totally different. So I then wrote to a lawyer, and he wrote back and said, no, you can't file a personal injury claim in New Zealand because of ACC and all the rest of it. So, okay. Well, then I went and looked at the ACC Act, which is what's on paper there. And section 26 defines all kinds of personal injury that are covered and not covered under ACC. Well, a lot of what is not covered and defined as a personal injury is a personal injury under a public liability insurance policy. So you've got malicious prosecution, you've got humiliation, you've got shock, mental anguish, and in some cases, even defamation. So that was what really got me going. Then
So it's the same. It's the same wording. They've just you called it a different name.
No, it's totally different. You see, malicious prosecution, humiliation, stuff like that, they are not covered under ACC. So correct, you can't file a personal injury claim if it's covered under ACC, but you can if it's not. And this is what the lawyer had to admit. He said, yeah, you're right, that's it, you can. So that was what got me going a bit further. Then this video turned up with this Australian lawyer in court, and what he said really blew my mind a little bit, because he was saying basically that all these high-ups in government who have been forcing what he calls the Pfizer injectables, he didn't even call it a vaccine, it's an injectable. All these people are going to be personally liable. And down at the bottom, if a patient got the jab from a doctor or a pharmacy or hospital, wherever, and they suffered injury, they can go after the organization that gave them the jab. And then if that organization pays out, they can then go higher up the chain and go after the health ministers and all these ratbag politicians. Oh, now that is interesting, because if you have an insurance claim, and this is where I got a bit confused. If you have an accident in your car, somebody hits you, you report it to your insurance company. Your insurance company pays out your claim, and then they subrogate against the company that was responsible.
Yeah,
and
right,
that's what this lawyer is talking about, you see. The jabber gets sued and his insurance, he doesn't talk about insurance though, the lawyer. I'll come back to that in a minute. But the jabber gets sued, and then the jabber goes further up the chain. And this is what would happen with insurance. The insurance company pays the claim, then they go after the government. And the beauty of it is you file an insurance claim, you don't need a lawyer, it don't cost you anything. So it's the insurance companies who've got the deep pockets and can afford to go after the ones higher up. So this is what I see as a real opportunity for we the people and you the people and everybody else the people to get compensation without suing. And where it gets interesting again, in one particular policy, it differentiates between a claim and a suit. A claim is simply a request for money. A suit, obviously, is a lawsuit where you need a lawyer. So you can file a claim, like I've done and some other folks are doing, to the outfit that did the damage, they then have to notify their insurance company of any claim or occurrence or anything that's likely to lead to a claim. And if they don't notify their insurer, the insurer can void the policy and not pay. So then they're in quiz street because they're on the hook for it. So this is where we're at the moment. We've got some claims in with different outfits, and we're now waiting to hear back. Which brings us back to my least favorite people other than New World, and that's the New Zealand cops. They are worth significant personal attention. I did an Official Information Act request to inquire whether or not the cops are personally bonded for what they do. No, they are not. I then wrote again saying, does New Zealand Police have professional indemnity insurance? No, they do not. I then wrote saying, well, do you have employers liability insurance? No, we do not. But they have a nice big fat $20 million public liability insurance with an outfit called Chubb Insurance, which is a very big company. I used to represent them years ago. They wouldn't send me the policy wording. So I went online, did a search, and I found policy wording for Chubb public liability insurance, which made very interesting reading. And so while the COPS policy may have some variations, some of the basic terms, conditions, definitions, what have you, are industry standard. And the Chubb policy is very, very interesting. It even includes defamation, which is unusual. So all these folks who got beaten up by the cops in Wellington, I honestly believe that they can file personal injury claims for humiliation, shock, fear, mental anguish, all kinds of good stuff. And they don't have to get lawyers. They just write an appropriate letter to the cops, setting out what their claim is. And also, I managed to find an Australian insurance company policy, which is virtually the identical wording to New Zealand policy. So
would you think the UK is the same as well? Sorry, Jeff, would you think the UK is the same? Everywhere's the same, more or less?
I do. I honestly do. Even it's just a matter of getting a policy wording. Have a look at it, see what it says. And I don't know about personal injury claims in UK because I haven't lived there for so long time, but I do know about them over here. And I think it's a similar situation in Australia, at least. So get on with it, folks. Get going, because as I say, the David Icke video, he's talking about the same kind of thing, but neither him nor that lawyer in Australia mentioned insurance. Now, I can imagine the lawyer not talking about insurance because there's no money in it for him, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. At least he brought up going after these people. David Icke, you know, I don't know what he knows.
Yeah, the David Icke podcast is called So How Much in Damages Are They Going to Pay? And that's David Icke on BitChute.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting one.
It is interesting because we had this conversation with you, I think last Thursday. Was it Thursday? Yes, Thursday. And then we watched that and it was like, oh my God, you can't even, it really did tie in.
Well, so does that short video by the lawyer in Australia, which I will send to you. It really is very, very good, short to the point. So I honestly believe it opens up a whole can of worms for a whole lot of people who are very deserving.
Yeah.
So what would somebody do then? Somebody would ring up their local police station and ask, or would you ring the government up and ask what insurance company they use for personal injury?
You're right. No, we don't even mention personal injury. I've done a little sort of template letter which can be sent to anybody. And it says, do you have professional indemnity or liability insurance? Do you have public liability insurance? Do you have employers liability insurance? And you put, if yes, please provide name of insurer, policy limit, excess, copy of the policy wording. In an ideal world, you would get all that, but we're not in it.
Yeah.
But if they tell you that, okay, we now have the equivalent of the English NHS here called Health New Zealand. And I did an OIA to them as well. Got a bit of a stroppy letter back from this woman who really fancied herself. But she did admit that Health New Zealand has professional indemnity insurance with this big outfit called QBE insurance. And this new Health New Zealand outfit, they have taken over all the liabilities of these district health boards, which used to exist. Well, the district health boards, they were doing jabs like you wouldn't believe. And some of these health trusts, they were sending out what we call the mobile jabatoires, which were camper vans.
It's a wicked name. Yeah, says it all.
It does say
it does say it all, doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
We have some rather naughty senses of humour up in my part of the world. Anyway.
We are from Sheffield.
Well, there you go.
So just to say to everybody, we've got some of the communications a bit like this is because we're going from UK to New Zealand. So there is a little bit of delay sometimes. So that's why.
When you lose it you lose it in the translation as well, of course.
Yeah. So template. So can you share this template with us, and so we can put that up online as well for people?
Yep.
Yeah, we can put it on the website. Can't
on the website.
If you can just message me your email address.
Yeah.
I can then send all these documents that I've done as attachments, and then you can do what you like with them.
We can attach that to this video then, can't we?
Yeah.
We can attach it to the video. Just another quick one as well.
And it's be on the Law Council website. You
had the same as what we have. We had a lot of reality stars, actors and stuff that was promoting this and obviously being paid.
Promoting the jab.
And obviously those being paid to do that. Yeah, they would have a public liability insurance in case any harm to what they've said as well, would they?
In all probability, and they may even have professional indemnity. Yeah, some kind of insurance to protect it. Oh, yeah. Everybody.
Because that was used as a weapon.
Yeah.
To the younger generation.
Yeah. There was I think it was in David Icke's video. He had these personalities all pushing it. And then there's that Piers Morgan guy who has done a 180-degree turn and trying to justify what he's done. But over here, of course, we've got all the fake news media that have been doing it as well. And
even though he's done a 180-degree turn, he still promoted the wrong thing. He's he's been out there day in, day out, the wrong thing, telling people the wrong
How many people have been harmed for what these people have said?
Exactly. And another thing, I filed a complaint with the Human Rights Commission in New Zealand against this guy, Tom Ride, who's the manager of the supermarket. And after a couple of months or so, they've accepted it. So that is moving ahead. And when I was talking to the investigator from the Human Rights, what you do, apparently, you go to a sort of a dispute resolution thing, where if the offer that's made is acceptable, that's where it finishes. But if it's not, then you can go to the Human Rights Tribunal. And that is the outfit that can award compensation up to $350,000, which is the maximum in the district court. But the reason I mentioned that is when I was talking to the investigator lady, she said, well, you know, because things have changed now as far as masks are concerned, they may feel that there's nothing really to do. I say, well, that's fine, but we're not talking about the situation now. We're talking about what it was back then. What happened then that's relevant, and what's going on today has no bearing on it. And
no, it doesn't.
No. It's like if you injure somebody last year and it was your fault, that claim's still in the now.
Right. Which in a way brings us back to the Far North Dictatorship Council. As a result of getting the public liability insurance, I now have a claim against them for an incident that happened back in November 2019, which I hadn't got a clue that I had. I have an unreserved apology. How about that? An unreserved apology.
Unreserved.
In writing from the council for what happened. Now, if that's not like a missing liability, I don't know what is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the thing is, who's telling these police to go and do this? Somebody's telling them to go and do it. They're being told to do it. We see a lot of things. Mark Sexton, he took all that information, government information, in. The police won't even look at it. Now, the thing is, it's because they're being told not to look at it. Don't accept it. Don't look at it. Somebody's telling them to do it.
Another interesting thing about the cops not having employers liability insurance.
That is.
The cops are hung out to dry.
So you can take a personal claim against these, then I take it.
No, I'm talking about the cop. I'm talking about the cops as employees. If the cops, if a cop as an employee suffers something done by his employer, he cannot claim under an employer's liability policy because there isn't one. So he's screwed. Yeah, I can understand why they don't have that, because the potential for claims must be phenomenal. I must tell you this. I found this amazing article written by a stuffed.com repeater, and it's, I'm going to have to find this. Talk among yourselves.
You go for it, yeah. So that's everybody then, really. Pop stars, reality stars that have received money to push it. You're talking of the whole shooting match.
All of them.
And then you've got in the UK we've got the Ofcom that radios shows,
they deal
all
with
different broadcasting, all of that. So Ofcom, would Ofcom have an insurance like public liability, or would the individuals have one as well?
Well, they may, but the organizations that you work for, they would have it. Like even your local fish and chip shop on the corner, they've probably got a property policy which includes public liability in case they poison somebody.
Yeah.
But this is an article that was written back in 2010, which I came across. 2.4 million paid out to settle police complaints. And it says here, police have paid out more than 2.4 million in compensation to members of the public and former officers. Publics receive money for human rights breaches, such as wrongful arrest. That's another one that's covered under a public liability policy. Wrongful arrest, false imprisonment, unlawful search and seizure, invasion of privacy, so on and so on. And it lists, all these payouts that have been made. And this was back in 2010, 2.4 million in 2010. It's a whole bunch of change. So I need to run in an OIA. It says here, police officers have also been paid out for employment disputes. 5 undercover officers received $450,000 in 2003 after they became addicted to drugs and alcohol. Now, that wasn't paid out under an employer's liability policy.
Because they haven't got one.
Probably didn't have one. So paid out by the cops, the government, or somebody. And it says this police association says police are regularly threatened with lawsuits, and it advises of a rise in prosecutions against individual officers. And this is 2010. And you imagine the potential as a result of violence committed against the protesters in Wellington earlier this year. I mean, I saw
all across the world.
because that's where they used the was it LRAD? They used it as a war weapon.
Well, I mean, they were just like Gestapo, basically.
Yeah.
And I saw there is video of this guy actually having his eye gouged out by a cop. That is on video. Now, that's not a claim against the cop.
Have you got that?
Oh yeah. If you
well, you'll have to flick that over to the Law Council, because we do a lot of public noticing through the Law Council.
If you go and do a search for counterspinmedia.com, they are the front and center people standing up. They're both being prosecuted now for some ridiculous thing, but they are purely facts and evidence. They have got some incredible videos. And actually, if you just go to the website of that number 8 union that I was telling you about, you'll find some interesting stuff on there as well. I'll send you links to all that. I'm a member.
Yes, send us all the links.
Yeah, and we'll put them all on there.
Yeah,
on the podcast as well.
On the podcast, yeah.
Okay.
That's one hell of a.
It is,
isn't it? Because I know when we when we have to do different jobs with different people, they don't know who we are. So if we've got to go to a property and it's, say, through a letting agency, the first thing they ask for is our public liability insurance. So we get the public liability insurance, we send that over to them as reference code, then they give us permission to go onto that property. We're not allowed on that property unless they see that insurance. Just in case we pull into the drive, the van could blow up, anything could happen, set fire to the house.
So we could do the same for the authorities if they try to go on our properties.
On our properties, we need to see
your public liability insurance
first. We can't go onto a property with a new client yet until they see the public liability insurance. So we've even sat outside of a gate before, or a farmhouse. Literally, a farmhouse was there. We had to wait to get permission before we could go on. Once they got that public liability insurance, we were then allowed to enter the property. Just in case anything happened. You could pull up to the driveway, the van could go on fire, it could set fire to the house. They just needed to know that we had that policy in place before they come onto the property for damages in case anything happened. So it's really weird that a lot of these companies don't even have their public liability insurance in place for the public to see. Maybe they should.
Yeah.
We can't operate without it, as in when we go on to property or whatever. Sometimes if they ask for it, we're not allowed on that property until, and then once they get that, we're in.
It's a bit different in New Zealand because of this accident compensation corporation. Because when you do the registration on your vehicle, bodily injury cover is included. So anybody, and this is what I think is one of the wrong things about ACC, anybody in New Zealand who is involved in any kind of accident gets ACC cover in the main. I'll give you a classic. Some years ago, near where we lived, there was this American lady working on her boat, and she was up a ladder, and she fell off the ladder and was quite badly injured. Everything that she suffered was covered under ACC, and she hadn't paid a dime into it. And this is common. We get these foreign tourists who are not used to driving on the left-hand side of the road, and they go tootling around New Zealand in camper vans, and they have these horrendous car accidents. It's all covered under ACC, the injury side of it, the property damages, and that's covered under the ordinary insurance. But all the body injury type stuff is, and it's ridiculous. But anyway, that's a whole other story.
See, at least we're okay going to New Zealand because we drive on the same side. That's why we don't want to go to America. It's all a bit weird. And France.
I saw a very funny quote today. Our Prime Minister, just sinister, as we call her, among other things, she was backing this guy to be the mayor in Auckland. And some wit said, there's no wonder he didn't get elected. He's so far to the left, he sometimes drives off the road.
Well, we was talking to a friend. We had a friend stay with us at the weekend, and
Hi, Nigel.
Hi, Nigel. He heard on the news that the UK government have been singing the praises of I forget what her name is now. Ardern.
Sinister.
Jacinda.
Yeah, sinister. Yeah, singing the praises that how well she's done it through the COVID, and it's unbelievable, isn't it?
And now they've just extended some sort of regulation, or they're talking about extending some regulations relating to COVID to 2025.
Why not? the bonkers. Yeah.
Anyway, we could get on to all kinds of different things. But as I say, I honestly do believe that using insurance to go after these people who have done what they have done is a way forward, which does not involve lawyers, does not involve a tremendous amount of expense, and it's a relatively simple process.
That everyone can do.
Everyone can do. And it covers all sorts of people. Everything.
I guess you've heard of the TV series that Edward Woodward used to be in called The Equalizer.
Yeah. Yes, love that back then, yeah.
Well, there are 2 movies as well with Denzel Washington. And there is also now a new series of The Equalizer with this American film star woman, Queen Latifah. And so I have established now a Facebook page called The Equalizer NZ22. And I am willing to help people if they want to go forward with these personal injury claims.
Wow.
I've only just set
That's amazing. Thank you. We'll share that. Thank you very much.
Yes,
that's amazing.
It is. So if you could send everything over to us, and then we can clip it onto the
video, onto the podcast.
Yeah, onto the podcast. It's not sort of fully functional yet because I'm not high tech and I haven't figured out how people can access it, but it is there, and I have a good mate over here who is going to help me with it. But and then also, if there's anybody else out there that can help us with this, get in touch.
Yeah, please.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, more the better, really. More the merrier.
Any insurance brokers out there who would be willing to help?
Yeah.
And lawyers. Anyway, there we go. So we've rambled on. I have anyway, rather more than you probably wanted me to, but I mean,
Jeff, some of our old Advocate podcasts used to go on for 5.5 hours. So honestly,
don't worry.
This is a walk in the park.
And it is only 10 o'clock in the morning for you anyway over there.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for that, Jeff.
Stay online, Jeff. We'll have a chat afterwards. If you stay there, we're just going to end the recording and leave you to that.
Well, thank you for this. As I say,
no, thank you.
It's really good to get this info out for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Really good.
Because you come into the Law Council, which we're part of, and that's where we met you, really, through the Law Council. It's a good thing, the Law Council, because we meet people from all over the place with all different ideas and experiences and everything else. So have a look at the Law Council. We'll put that on there as well on the chat.
Yeah.
The website for it.
Okay.
Cheers again, Jeff.
Cheers, Jeff.
Out the Zoom, and then what do we do?
You just stay on. We're just going to cancel.
Stay on. I'll just press stop on the record.
We'll just press stop on the record.
Oh, okay. All right.